Jonathan Lim is an assistant professor of teaching in marketing at UCR, known for his charismatic lectures, his care for students, and his focus on making education relevant, fresh, and fun. He's received the Golden Apple Award, teaches Business 112 and Business 117, and has a background in both psychology and business. Whether he's teaching marketing or emceeing at weddings, he's got a gift for connecting with people. Professor Lim, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the brilliant introduction, Alan. Wow,
brilliant.
You know my life better than I do. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, it's brilliant because you made it. I just kind of put it all together.
I appreciate that.
I just put it all together in words. Do you feel like it's an accurate introduction for you, by the way?
Yeah. I would say so. I mean, that captures a lot of the different things that I, tried to make my UCR career about and tried to, do over the past several years being here. So, yeah, I'd say it's accurate. I mean, I try to, teach students as much as I can to the best of my ability. But, hey, I mean, try to make an enjoyable, entertaining experience at the same time and make it something that's worthwhile and hopefully worthy of their attention. So, yeah, I totally agree with that introduction for sure. I hope I live up to it day by day. That's my goal, yeah.
Well, so far you're living up to it for sure. And I had I showed you the bunch of questions that I had prepared for you, but it's clicking on me that you mentioned, I think it was in your LinkedIn about section, like you could have been a talk show host or you could have been a stand-up.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? What do you mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
What's in your head?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's a real good question. So, every kid when they're thinking about their dream job growing up, right? I mean, very few people say, "Oh, I want to become a professor," right? Or I want to become a lawyer. I want to become a engineer, right? Or any of these like standard careers that we end up going into with our lives, right? And I love being a professor. Don't get me wrong. I really love it. It's something that I very much enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis. But sometimes some students ask me, hey, if you had like a dream job, like you could do whatever you wanted, right? I would say, man, like being like a game show host, talk show host, something of that nature. It just seems like such a fun job. I mean, like even like this right here, like being a podcast host, like you're just coming in, talking to people, picking their brains, all those kinds of things. It's like, man, like it seems really fascinating, right? And I think that when it comes down to it, people don't often realize it, but like being a game show host, being like a podcast host or a talk show host, being a professor, they have so much similarities together, basically, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you have an audience. You're trying to give them a product that's worthwhile, right? And trying to whether it's teach them something, educate them on something, enlighten them about something, but you're trying to do it in a way that will grab their attention and that will kind of really stick with them even after they leave that room or whatever, right? So I think in a lot of ways, being a talk show host or like a game show host, it's just more it's more of a whimsical variation of what I do on a daily basis. So I think that's the reason why I say it for, because would I ever get a chance to do it? Well, who knows, right? But it'd be just kind of like pie in the sky kind of dream thing, like, oh, like it'd be kind of fun just to try my talents and see if I could ever try it just to one episode of Jeopardy or one episode of, whatever game shows on TV, I'd say, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I ask this specific question is I've made the connection before. Okay. And I think I made the connection last year. So here at UCR, if you want to be a teaching assistant, if you want to boost your application, you need to show up to these teaching assistant workshops.
Okay, I heard about that, yeah.
Right? And so in one of these workshops, I saw an interesting, because I was just on the background, it was a Zoom, camera off,
Sure.
The whole thing. But there was an interesting interaction between two participants of the workshop. They weren't giving the workshop, they were just showing up to the workshop. And one of them was they had a very set approach in terms of teaching. As in, you know what, I am the teacher, I come in with my information, and you better adapt to my teaching style.
Okay, yeah, sure.
And figure out the lesson as I deliver it.
Gotcha, okay.
I am not your circus monkey.
Okay.
I am not here to entertain you, I'm here to educate you. That was their approach.
Okay, sure.
And for like the next 15 minutes after that, it was chaos in the room.
Sure.
Of people trying to kind of deliver the point that you just made.
Yeah.
If you are an educator, you are teaching, but there's many different ways to teach, and you really need to keep the audience engaged.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to keep the audience engaged, you need to display some level of charisma. You need to develop some level of empathy. You need to be aware of what's going on in the room.
Sure.
Plus all the knowledge that you're trying to deliver.
Yeah,
and so that's when I first made the connection, because I myself have always loved or wanted to do something like this, right? So doing a podcast or being a stand-up comedian or being a host of a show or something. because I feel like that is where my skill set lies.
Okay.
Being able to communicate my charisma plus the knowledge that I'm trying to deliver.
Okay.
I've always been great at presentations.
Okay.
For the same reason I want to do this, so I learned how to be good at presentations through a digital medium.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
And so I made the connection back then, and I was like, oh man, these professions are extremely similar.
Yeah,
and I
man.
see it now as a teaching assistant for Spanish.
Yeah.
It's basically like an hour long, be as funny as you can while you're teaching Spanish.
Yeah. That's the way to kind of get into their heads, right? Otherwise, it's hard to teach someone a language if they're just bored out of their minds and they don't want to learn. You got to find a way to make them want to learn it. Yeah.
And not just the language, any material.
Yeah.
Any material.
Actually, let me ask you a question. I'm curious now.
Go ahead.
I'm personally just curious. So obviously you've had all these different kinds of roles, whether as a TA, right? So you've given presentations as a student. Right now you're a podcast host trying to put these podcasts together. So what would you say actually? What was it a natural, seamless transition for you, kind of running these podcasts, like being in front of the screen, being in front of camera, or did you feel like, man, this is kind of like a new challenge, this is a new thing. It's different being in front of a class. It's different being in front of a bunch of kind of nameless camera screens. Did you feel it was different in any way, just kind of transitioning into this form of medium? Actually,
it's different.
Okay,
it's different and it's challenging. As a student, I've been a student for what? Years.
Your life,
my
whole life, basically, right? Yeah.
My whole life I've been a student.
Yeah.
So for any type of in-class activity, you do presentations.
Sure.
So that's a very standard type of thing. And I was always a great student. And so because I wanted to do well in my classes, I developed the skill to deliver a presentation in a way that would enhance my probabilities of getting 100% on the presentation.
Okay.
Right? So I just got really good at doing that. And then that translated over to running for student government. If I wanted to run for student government, then I would need to be in front of the entire school and deliver speeches in front of everyone.
Sure.
I would always be the one selected to do the graduation speeches. I would be the one selected to go up in front of a boardroom and then like talk to people. But in every single one of these settings, I have people in front of me.
That's true. Yeah.
So I can communicate through body language. I can communicate through pauses. I can communicate through a lot of different ways that don't necessarily translate one-to-one to other mediums. I remember at La Sierra University, where I did my undergrad, I was the vice president of the student organization.
Cool.
And it was my role to do town halls. So the open forums that we do here, essentially the same thing. And when I did it, it was during COVID. So I had to deliver them through Zoom. And so I had to hop on Zoom and then talk to 157 nameless faces or faceless names.
Yeah.
And deliver, and be a host and be an MC essentially.
Sure.
And so that translates very differently. And that even translates differently to what we're doing right now, because I'm talking to you with my audience somewhere else in mind.
Yeah.
So technically you're not my audience.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
My audience is somewhere else. So I need to talk to my audience while I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And that is really hard for me to do.
It's a learned skill, just like anything else, right? Yeah. It takes skill and training, and it takes reps is what it takes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you're my second rep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and that's how I've been approaching this. I'm thinking about Dr. Lewis was my first rep, and it was terrible. Well, it wasn't terrible. The conversation was great, but then the translation to the media part of it was the challenge there. Yeah. And just like in the gym, it's going to hurt when you do it first and you're going to do it wrong. Yeah. You're not going to be able to lift a dumbbell as heavy as you want. You're not going to lift it with the form that you want. Sure. And then it's going to hurt the day after. Okay. And that's exactly how I felt with my first interview with Dr. Lewis.
Yeah.
But this is my second rep, and it's going to get better.
Yeah. Every rep will get a little easier. Yeah.
But let's do this more about you rather than me.
Sure. Yeah.
Part of charisma I've learned is making the conversation about the other person. Sure. Or making it all about the other person, which you just did to me very well. Very easily. Sure. And I went on Rate My Professor when I was doing research.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool.
You're probably the professor that has the highest Rate My Professor profile that I've ever seen on any single professor. You got like a 99%
appreciate that
score.
Appreciate that.
If you see the comments that people leave, I think there was 60 comments, and every single one of them was a positive comment.
Appreciate that.
So in a very TLDR type of way, your students consistently describe you as engaging, hilarious, deeply invested in their success.
Yeah.
Were you always like this? How did you develop this, and how did you specifically develop it in your classroom teaching style?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. I think that, and I think this is a good lesson to learn for everyone, right? Every person who's listening to this right now. I think it's a lot of times we tend to think like, oh, charisma or likability or personality or humor, like we tend to think, oh, like either I got it or I don't, kind of thing. Like either I'm like this or I'm not, right? And so you see people, like you see your professors, or you see these game show hosts, or you see these podcast hosts or whatever, and you say, man, like they're so charismatic, they're so likable, they're so this or that, right? And we tend to assume that, oh man, like I can never be that, right? I can't do that because I just don't have that gift that they have. And maybe to some extent it is partly God-given, right? I mean, some people are just maybe naturally more energetic or enthusiastic, right? But what I've learned from this experience of teaching all these years is that a lot of it can be learned, it can be taught. Like it's a skill that you can train yourself in, right? I mean, you can train yourself into thinking in terms of figuring out, okay, how can I put a lecture together that will engage the audience, right? Or you can train yourself in terms of, okay, how can I be a better speaker in a way that will, really kind of captivate this crowd of people, right? So I think that I didn't start out like this. I didn't start out like from day one, like where I am today, kind of this current product right now, right? It took a lot of reps, like we were just mentioning, a lot of reps over and over again of every quarter, every class. Okay, okay, thinking about it, I could have done this a little better, right? I could have done that a little better. I could improve on this, right? Even something that sometimes students don't always see, like for them, they kind of see the lecture and they say to themselves, man, like, oh, I like that lecture. It was good, right? But as a speaker, we kind of know. I mean, I'm sure you've spoken many times. The audience may feel like, oh man, that was a great lecture or that was a great presentation. But you yourself know where you made all the mistakes. You said all the wrong things. You didn't pause long enough. You didn't, hold your tone long enough, whatever the case may be, right? So I think that we kind of are our own worst enemy, and we know like, oh man, I could have done this better, and it's just a bunch of trial and error, right? Every time I walk out of a lecture, I say, man, can I improve in this way? Could I have done better in this way? Could I have held this point for a little longer? Should I have, maybe tried to make this point a bit more interactive, right? And I think as you do that more and more, if you are willing to self-diagnose and you're willing to be kind of critical of yourself, if you're willing to take those points and be willing to work and improve on it, right, consistently, you can be really good at whatever you do in life. And I think that's something that I'll say. Like, I didn't start out like this. It was just a bunch of self-diagnosis, day after day, week after week, month after month. And then from there, right, once you self-diagnose, right, putting into practice. And I think what's hard is that people, they do that, but then they feel like, oh man, like I'm trying to put into practice, but it feels so awkward still feels kind of weird, right? But they don't realize it takes a lot of reps for something to become natural, right? Like it takes, like if you're in the gym and you want to build muscle, you don't build muscle after doing it, being in the gym for a week or two. It takes months and years before you feel like, man, like I'm as strong as I want to be, and where lifting the barbells, lifting the weight rack becomes second nature to you, where you don't even feel it anymore, right? So I think that's where people kind of sometimes they second guess, like it takes practice, but it also takes time. And if you want to be good at anything, it takes time, and people, they don't realize the time it takes to be a professor, be a podcast host. They just see the end product and they assume, oh, you're either that or you're not. When in reality, there's a step-by-step process that gets you there. And I'm sure you know that process well, for sure, in all things that you do in your life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. How long have you been teaching?
This is, since 2018. So this is going on I guess ending my 7th year now. Yeah.
7th year. And you started teaching here at UCR?
Yeah, for sure. I started back in 2018. So I've been here all 7 years.
So you started on the academic year starting 2018? So
fall 2018, yeah. Fall 2018. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that academic year, yeah.
2020 to 2021.
Exactly, yeah.
And then 2022 to 2023.
Yes.
On your third academic cycle,
yes,
you win the Golden Apple Award.
Yes, I think like the third or fourth, something like that in the middle of my career. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so far, yeah.
What is the Golden Apple Award? What does it entail, and why do you believe, or why do you know that you received it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, for viewers out there who don't know, I mean, basically the Golden Apple, it's basically the student voted teaching award that every year they students are allowed to vote for who their favorite faculty members are based on whatever criteria that they set forth in the award, right? And so students get to vote on this every year, and a couple years ago, I won the Golden Apple Award for the undergrad elective classes, which is the classes I mainly teach, like you mentioned, 112, 117. Those are all elective courses meant for, upper division juniors and seniors. So, I think winning that award, I mean, at the end of the day, these kinds of, here's what I'll say about the award. I mean, it's nice to win because it's like validation, right? Validation that, hey, like you did a good job, the students are learning something. And I think sometimes I'll say this, right? Like as a professor, sometimes I think students maybe they don't always see it, but sometimes we get insecure too. Like on a day-to-day basis, like we're going through these weeks, we're going through these quarters, and sometimes we don't know, like, oh man, like, am I doing a good job? Like, are they connecting with me, right? Sometimes you see students who are dozing off in class or who aren't paying attention. You're like, man, like, did I just like mess up this lecture? Like, did I not make an impact or whatever, right? And so I think sometimes we as professors, we get insecure. Like we wonder, like, oh, is what I'm doing really helping someone, right? That's why most of us get in this profession to begin with, because we want to help students or we want to make a difference in someone's life, right? We want to, just, do something that's worthwhile for the next generation of people, right? And so I think winning these awards is kind of that nice validation, like, hey, like, what I am doing, it is working. It's making a difference. My teaching methods are effective, right? And students are noticing it and it's helping them. I think that it's really helpful from that regard, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't want to make it more than it is because it's a nice award, but intrinsically, I think, right, whether you win an award or not, I mean, the goal to get better and better, right, that has to be within you, right? And it has to be something that you really strive for, award or no award or whatever. And that's something that I think motivates me. It's at the end of the day, like, hey, can I get 1% better every day, 2% better every quarter, whatever, right? Things of that nature. I think that's kind of the inward drive. But external validation, I mean, hey, we all like it, so I'm not gonna be mad about it for sure.
It's the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate the external validation for sure, right? But it can't be the thing that you aim for as your end all be all for sure. Yeah,
I agree. I fully agree. And I love the mentality that you bring to the delivery of your lessons. I've never been in one of your classes. I wish I was, based on everything I've learned about you and about what you do. But specifically, there are specific things that you probably do besides, you're very self-critical. You're very you're looking towards self-development in the classroom.
Sure, yeah.
And that gets displayed in different ways. For example, one example that I have is that I've been a TA for Spanish for 3 quarters.
Okay.
And essentially for Spanish, you are the primary instructor.
Sure.
Because there's no such thing as a TA. There's TAs labeled under the administrative paperwork.
Sure.
But essentially, you show up and you have a classroom all to yourself.
Yeah.
And you decide what to teach.
Sure.
You decide how to teach the lessons.
Sure.
Basically. And I realized after my first quarter that just showing up and teaching the lesson was not enough to keep my students engaged.
Gotcha.
So you gotta add a few things in here. Maybe it's an activity at the end.
Sure.
Maybe an activity in the beginning or in the middle. Adding stuff. And so this quarter, what I'm doing very specifically is I built a Spotify playlist.
Oh, okay.
Where you can come in as a student, you can click on the playlist and you can add any song.
Oh,
and I have some quote unquote restrictions around it.
Sure.
Where the song has to be in Spanish.
Oh, I like
and
that.
And the song cannot be reggaeton, like Bad Bunny and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I love Bad Bunny. He's my favorite artist. Okay. But I recognize that the grammar structure that he uses in his...
Not teaching you the best grammatical style to actually learn Spanish. Okay.
Exactly. So it's very fun to see the playlist build as the quarter goes.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And it's also very fun because as soon as the class begins or before class begins, I'm playing the playlist.
And it's all student provided, so they had the buy-in for that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just one example of what I've done, but I want to hear about what you've done. Specifically, a student said that they felt like they were a part of a community, not just a classroom.
Sure.
So what does it take to build that?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great question. There's no playbook. I'll say that, right? There's no like you can't. That's one. It's this teaching and creating this kind of community. And I appreciate that student who said that because I'm really grateful that what I'm doing is transmitting and they're receiving it well, right? But yeah, there's no playbook. There's no like 5-step process where you can say, okay, if you do these 5 things, you will always have a great community that people will want to be a part of and learn, right? It's not like that, right? Everyone has their different style, and I think for me, you kind of similar to you, Alan. When I first started teaching, right, I didn't know any better. So I just thought like, oh, like as a teacher, the most important thing you got to do is just communicate information, right? If you can make sure you have good lecture slides, they have good content, they have good knowledge, that's all students really want, right? That was my mentality, because I just assume that's all being a professor really is, just providing information, right? But I think that as I kind of went through the quarters and went through the years, I realized that being an instructor, whether it's a TA or a professor or anything like that, man, it's more than that, right? It's more than just like giving them information, because if that's all you're doing, I mean, why can't they just go read a textbook, right? Or why can't they just go watch a YouTube video that will do the exact same thing and will save them the time of having to come to class and doing all these other things, right, that they had to do? So it made me realize, like, what is our added value? Like, why do they want to come here for, right, at the end of the day? And I think when you think of it from that big picture perspective, the learning is very important, right? Of course, the learning is central to what we do. That's why we're at a university, right? But creating a community where they feel like it's not just about learning the stuff, but it's actually a learning environment, a learning community, I think that's what's most important, where they feel like, man, like, I'm coming here and I'm not just being taught something, right? I actually want to learn, right? And I think that's the biggest difference in what every classroom should be trying to create, right? It's one thing just to teach people a bunch of random facts. It's another thing to give them that motivation to say, I want to learn, right? I want to actually come here. I enjoy learning, right? Because at the end of the day, these students, they can never learn everything about advertising in 10 weeks or about consumer behavior. It's just not possible, right? But at least if you can give them that love of learning, that love and desire to want to learn, man, that's something valuable where they will carry that with them the rest of their lives. And then that's what turns into them saying, okay, I want to become an advertiser one day, or I want to become a consumer researcher one day, stuff like that. So I think that it starts there at a very high level. It starts with you understanding, like, what are you here for? Why are you doing these things for, right? And as you start to understand that and understand the purpose of this, right, I think that from there, what happens next is, we'll pause real quick.
Yeah, we'll pause real quick. Hi.
Can I get your print all of these out?
You can't get mine. You have to get Sandy's.
I got hers.
You got hers? Oh, yeah. Then, yeah, whatever Sandy says. All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So once you have that at a very high level, then you think about, okay, how do I execute that, right? So similar to what you mentioned, right? As soon as students walk in the door, how do you get them to feel comfortable about learning? How do you get them to feel comfortable about wanting to be there, right? So just like you, I play music in class. I have a Spotify account. And I turn on music, right? And actually, it kind of forces me to stay young, because I feel like listen to like what's on the Billboard Top 100. If it were up to me, I probably would like be still stuck in like 2013 or 2015 or whatever, right? But because of these students, I'm like, okay, like, who is this like Sabrina Carpenter person, like, who I'm listening to? Who's Bad Bunny? Like, who is like, who is like this random, like, this random rapper, singer, Kendrick Lamar, whoever, right? Like, it forces me to stay young. But I think even beyond that, so the music sets the tone, right? Where like they're coming in, they're in a good mood. They realize, like, oh, it's not just this kind of weird, sterile environment where I'm just coming in and sitting there. Music's playing. I want to learn. I'm in a good mood now. And then I actually go around and I actually greet each person one by one, actually, right? And it's something that when I was in high school, my teacher did. He would actually greet us one by one. He would stand outside the door and greet us one by one, right? And it seemed like such a small thing. You don't think about it, but it made me feel like, oh man, like, this guy's like taking the opportunity to actually greet each of us and like by name and ask us how we're doing, right? Like, such a small thing, but when you have like 80 students in a class, right, and to feel like your professor actually knows something about you, that's where it takes it from, like you mentioned, it's not just my instructor giving me some information, but it's actually like sometimes people say like you feel sometimes like more like my friend talking to me, basically, right? My friend just giving me information, right? So of course it's easier for them to receive it when it's coming from a trusted source who they feel like, I mean, why do we listen to our parents? Why do we listen to our friends? Because they're trusted sources who we value, who we feel like they have my best interests at heart, right? And I think it's the same here with faculty as well too. Little things like that, introducing yourself to them, right? Saying hi to them, right? Things like that before, and that's just before the lecture begins. And then when the lecture happens, there's so many little things that you can do. Like you mentioned, activities. How can I plan activities? Because one thing that I would encourage faculty to do, and I say this very, very caringly and very kind of very kindly, right? But I used to think, man, like sometimes I would lecture and I would be like, how come students are like falling asleep or whatever? How come they're like, don't they realize like I put so much effort into this? Like, don't they get the knowledge that they should be receiving from this, right? But I remember like being on the other side, and I would have to sometimes as faculty, sometimes we actually have to evaluate each other and actually sit on each other's lectures to make sure that that we're doing a good job. And so sometimes I would actually sit in on other faculty's lectures, and I remember like sitting there for like an hour and a half is kind of hard actually. Like it ain't easy. Like, and it made me realize it's been so long since I've been a student that now realizing that, man, sitting for an hour and a half in a lecture, right? I made me realize like I want to check my phone half the time, and I had to stop myself from like putting it in my pocket, right? Because I didn't want to be disrespectful, right? But it made me realize, oh dang, like an hour and a half, that's kind of a long time, right? And it made me realize from that perspective, I think it was good to think about things from the student's perspective, knowing that, man, it's a long time to ask. So what can I do to help break up the monotony, break up the just that kind of chunk of time, right? To make it more engaging and fun. I think thinking from that perspective, activities, right? How can I have games in class? How can I have, just fun stories to tell them? All these kinds of things, right? I think those things really help a lot, basically, right? I think to answer your question. I think the last thing is, one thing I would tell folks is like don't be afraid to show the students your personality. I think students, they want to get to know you, but they're scared, right? They're like, oh, my professor, he's so smart. He has a PhD. He has this, he has that, right? Like he would never want to get to know me. He never would want to like talk to me, right? But showing them a bit of who you are, right? And showing that you're human too. So sometimes I'll tell them stories in class about my undergrad days or things that I went through in life, right? Those things help them to realize, oh, like he's just a guy like me. And when he was 21, he went through the same dumb things that I did, made the same dumb mistakes, right? And I think those things are helpful in humanizing you and creating that community. So anyways, long answer to that, but I think those are kinds of the things that I would say that really help to create that kind of environment for sure, man.
Yeah, more than a long answer, I feel like that's a complete answer.
Yeah.
And going to the point that you were mentioning about not being able to build a rapport or a relationship with your professor.
Yeah.
That's so true. I feel like I have not had the chance to build a professional relationship with my professors.
Yeah.
Because the only points of contact are them delivering the class to me.
Sure.
Or if I go out of my way to proactively
go to office hours.
When I'm a very busy student.
Sure.
I barely have a time or a chance to visit professors.
Yeah.
Their office hours. And even when I do, I feel like I need to come in with something.
Sure.
I need to come in with a question, and then maybe there's some rapport building in the middle.
Yeah.
And then I gotta get out.
I gotta present myself respectably to them. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a sense, it feels, from a student perspective, it feels like the professor is sitting in an ivory tower.
Sure. Sometimes,
from the barrier of communication amongst the two, because even when a classroom setting, in a traditional classroom setting, you're all facing the professor's facing you. That must mean that this person is of high status, high importance.
Sure. Yes.
Which is the way in which I'm going to treat you. Which, as you were mentioning earlier, increases the barrier or the friction in encoding the message that they're trying to deliver.
Sure.
And that's in such a marketing concept that you're describing. When you're sending a message, there's a lot of layers of friction until it receives, or until the receiver gets the message.
Sure, man.
And so you need to account for every single one of those barriers. And it seems like you're doing so in your teaching. Yeah. Which, kudos to you, man.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Alan. I do appreciate that.
I also want to kind of go back a little bit in time, just talk about your professional career, how you ended up in this point where you're actually a professor.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So you went to UC Irvine?
Yes, I did, yeah.
You also went to UCLA?
Yes.
And now you're at UCR?
Sure.
You never studied at UCR? You
never
taught
did.
At UCR?
Never did, yeah.
So what did you study at UCI? What did you study at UCLA?
Yeah.
And how did that lead you to here?
It's a good question, yeah. When I was at UCI, I mean, as an undergrad, right, kind of like I mentioned before at the beginning of this, I never thought that being a professor was like a real job. And I mean, of course it's a real job, don't get me wrong, but like you never really think that, you can become a professor, because it just seems like it's not like you don't. Most of us, when we were kids growing up, we don't have a lot of professors in our lives that we know, right? Most of our neighbors are like teachers or like doctors or like, engineers or like, librarians or something like that, right? So you're exposed to very few professors in your life outside of a college setting, right? So I didn't really know you could become that, right? So like most students, my first couple of years, I was just kind of figuring things out. I was like, what do I want to do with my life? I'm so confused. I'm so lost. And that's the thing I feel bad for 18, 19-year-olds, all the 18, 19-year-olds watching this. I mean, the fact that society expects you to know what you want to do at 18, I'm like, I barely know what I want to do 2 days from now. How can I know what I want to do when I'm 40 years from now, when I'm 60 years old, right? I think it's unfair to put that expectation on people who have not had enough experience to know what they want to do with their life, basically, So I didn't really know. I was like, gosh, what do I want to do, And so I was kind of just I knew I was interested in psychology. I knew it was fascinating, but even then I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I majored in psychology, actually, if you may have saw from my LinkedIn, right? I majored in psychology, but I didn't really know how I was going to use that, right? And a lot of my friends who were majoring in that, they were doing like social work, or they were doing like clinical psychology, therapies, et cetera, right? And I was like, I don't think I want to do that, but I don't really know what I want to do, right? And so I added business as a second major halfway through my college career, mainly out of practicality. And the reason why I say that is because I was like, if I don't know what to do with psychology, then I feel like business is an easy pathway to get a job, right? I think that's how most of us think of business, right? Like they're like, oh, like easy pathway to get a job, right? You do business, you concentrate in accounting, you concentrate in finance, right? Okay, it's very clear the link between you and your job in the future, right? Mm-hmm. So I added that on out of mere practicality. I'm like, oh, I think I just want to do this because like, if nothing else, I can become an accountant, right? And this is not offense to all the accountants in the world, because we need you all to do our tax returns. We need accountants, right? And if you enjoy it, good for you, right? You're a better person than I am. But so I added that on. But I think what I realized, I remember applying to, the Big Four and all these firms, because I thought I was going to do that. I really thought psychology is like an interest to me, and it was really going to be like accounting was where my life would take me, kind of thing. But, so I applied to all the Big Four firms. I did all that good stuff, right? Went through the recruiting cycles I'm sure you've heard about from your friends, or you maybe went through yourself, right? Like all that recruiting and things like that. But it was, interesting enough, it was like crickets. Like it was like I didn't hear anything back from anyone, right? And I didn't get interviews. I didn't get opportunities for summer internships. And at the time, I didn't really know why, because I was like, my GPA is pretty good. Like I have a good resume. Isn't that enough, right? And I mean, obviously, it takes more than that. It takes networking, and it takes building connections and all these things. But just from that moment of my life, I was like, why am I not getting these opportunities? And sometimes in life, when those things kind of happen, it's a good sign that okay, like you got to fight for your dreams, right? You got to fight for what you want. But sometimes when those things happen, sometimes it's a good time to kind of reevaluate and like really think about where do I want my life to take me, right? So if I had gotten that internship, if I had gone that worked at Deloitte or EY or whatever, I probably just would have worked we wouldn't have this conversation right now. We wouldn't be here right now, basically. So I'd be a partner or tax manager or whatever at Deloitte or something like that, right? But that closed door was really instructive, because it made me stop where I was at, stop running towards this path, and made me like sit back and evaluate and think, is this really what I want to do with my life, basically? Is this really what I want my life to be about? And I probably never really wanted to do that, right? But I did it out of convenience, out of the fact that my friends were doing it, out of the fact that it was a good job, right? And once again, nothing wrong with accounting. It's a great job if that's what you want, right? But it made me really reevaluate, is this really what I want to do? And so I think sometimes in life, we tend to cry over closed doors for good reason, because, we don't like getting rejected from things that we want in life, right? But sometimes having those moments where it causes you to sit back and reevaluate, is this what I want my life to be about? Is this what I want to do with my life? I think those things are helpful, man. And I think like it made me realize, you know what? Maybe accounting isn't really what I want to do, right? And this closed door gave me the opportunity to pivot and to reinvent myself in a lot of ways, and think about, what do I really want to do? And the crazy thing is that summer, because I didn't get an internship, I actually was looking for things to do over the summer. I was like, I'm like, I have free time. I have like 2 months. What am I going to do with my life? And I saw that I got an email about this opportunity to become a TA for a summer class, for like a freshman class. It was like intro to college. So it was like very basic for incoming freshmen, right? For like incoming 18-year-old freshmen, not even in fall quarter of college for the first time. And I was like, okay, I have nothing to do. Might as well just make a few extra bucks and TA this class. And in doing that, right, it was my first time ever teaching a class. So it was my first time ever like putting a lecture together, like, holding office hours, grading papers, talking with students. But in doing that, it made me realize, man, like, I really like doing this. Like, this is really enjoyable, right? And I think the teaching, the mentorship, the working with students, it was really fascinating to me. And it really it was fulfilling in the sense that I knew that I had a hand in helping these freshmen out as they began their college career. And I was kind of the friend and the mentor that they needed, right? That they could rely on moving forward. And I think that with that kind of goal in mind, it made me realize, like, man, like, if I could do this as part of the next chapter of my life and be that and at a bigger scale as a professor, and like have that kind of role in people's lives where I am mentoring them, helping them, guiding them, right? Not like we were just talking about, not just teaching them, but even going beyond that and just being a part of their lives, right? And feeling like, hey, like if we don't know who to go to, we know we have Professor Lim here to kind of talk to about life or whatever, right? I think those are things that kind of inspired me and kind of set me on this path. And I realized, okay, if this is what I want to do, then I got to get my PhD. This is why I went to UCLA, got my PhD, right? And I've been on that path ever since. Gone to UCR afterwards. So I spent 5 years at UCLA, got my PhD in marketing, right? Because marketing, I figured that was kind of a nice intersection between psychology and business, between my 2 degrees. So it's kind of the nice intersection. I might as well use it in that way, right? And from there, doing that, right? I think coming here, it wasn't, people think like, oh, you must love the UC system. Like you chose to come here for grad school, undergrad, and then, you're working. And of course, I love the UC system. I'm a product of it, but it was not intentional. I'll tell you that. Like, I didn't intend to go to grad school at a UC. I didn't intend to work at a UC, right? But sometimes the plans that we have in life, sometimes God laughs in our face. Sometimes I really believe, sometimes, but and I didn't plan it, but it happened this way, and I'm not mad about it. I'm thankful. UCR has been a great school, and I have so many good things to say about it. So, fast forward, and now I'm here, man.
And now you're here, and you're one of the best professors that UCR has had. These are not my words. I've never had you as a professor.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
These are quite literally not my words. This is the compilation, the aggregate of what your Rate My Professor says.
Appreciate it.
And I've seen some very jarring things about some of the professors here at UCR.
I'm sure, yeah.
When I pull up Rate My Professor, but yours was a refreshing difference. And I'm going to actually wrap up because we are at time. It felt like we just talked for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But we're at time. I got to cut it off because I promised you only 30 minutes.
Sure.
But before we wrap it up, I just want you to kind of summarize, because you've been giving out nuggets of information throughout this entire conversation.
Sure.
But to any aspiring teacher, or you can choose, to any aspiring teacher or to any student looking to develop as they're starting their undergraduate, maybe they're a freshman,
sure,
and they're in the same shoes that you are in, and they just don't know what the hell they're doing with their life.
Yeah, sure.
What's some advice that you would give to a student, or what is one advice that you would give to an aspiring professor, an aspiring teacher?
Yeah, for sure. Those are good questions, and man, so much I could say, but I'll try to limit it as much as a professor can, because most of us professors, we can talk until the skies turn red, but I'll try to limit it as much as I can. But here's what I'll say first off for students. When it comes to students, I think my best advice I would give them, at least what comes to mind right now, is for students, I would say, I would say a lot of times when we think about college, we treat it as like, this is like the key, the roadmap to the next 40 years of my life, right? I need to figure everything out now, today, in the next 4 years of my life, right? But one thing I would tell students is that in reality, your story, the story of your life, it's going to take the next 40 years of your life to write, not the next 4 years, right? So how your life plays out is not just going to be determined by the next 4 years of your life. That will have a big role in it. But really, right, even after you graduate, so much of your story is still unwritten. So much of your story is still out there for you to figure out. So never feel like, oh man, like I got to have it all ready to go by the time I graduate June 15th, right? I have to have perfect knowledge of the next 40 years of my life. Life don't work like that, right? You may think, man, like even when you graduate, you may think, I want to do this, but then you realize 2 years later, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do something else, right? I've had so many students who coming through as business majors, and then 2 years later they graduate and they tell me, hey, Jonathan, guess what? I want to become a dentist. I'm like, what the heck? Like, how did that happen? Like, I want to become like a first grade teacher. I'm like, and it's not good or bad, but it makes you realize that life is not something that you just figure out right now. It's something that you discover day by day in the moment for the next 40 years of your life. So for you, for myself, right, we never know where life will take us. We don't know where life will be in 5 years, in 10 years, right? So I think don't put the burden on yourself to feel like you got to figure it all out today in the next 4 years of your life, right? You have time. But at the same time, right, what I'm not trying to say is, oh, well, then, just kind of, fool around and just have fun the next 4 years and do whatever you want. Take these next 4 years critically at the same time, because it is an important 4 years, right? And the things that you do in your 20s, as I'm sure you already know, Alan, right? Like they have huge implications for the rest of your life, right? Yes, the rest of your life is being figured out day by day, right? But the things you do in the next decade of your life, right? So many big decisions you make will come in your 20s. What kind of career do I want, right? Who will I marry? What will I believe in, right? Where will I live? What will I do with my life, right? Most of those big decisions happen in the next 10 years of your life. So know that you have time to figure things out, but at the same time, make wise, smart decisions as you make these critical decisions that will alter the course of your life, right? For your future, basically moving forward. So it's kind of a balance, it's a give and take, I would say, right? Mm-hmm. Don't be too stressed, but at the same time, be wise in how you make these decisions. Realize you need to make important decisions in your life and prepare yourself accordingly. So if that makes sense, I guess, yeah. 100%. And I think last thing I would say, just for professors, I think sometimes as professors, a lot of times we start out, most of us, when we start as professors, we start out with the best of intentions, right? We want to help students change the world in some small way, right? Do something that will make a difference in people's lives. And it's a perfectly good motive and a perfectly good intention. And if you don't have those kinds of intentions, right, doing this kind of job will be hard, obviously, right? But I think for any professor who moves forward and who goes down this path, there will probably come a point in time 2-3 years from now when you say, man, like, am I truly making a difference, right? Oh man, students are not paying attention. Oh man, I'm not as passionate about it as I once was before, right? And just in general in life, I think we all probably feel that way at times, right? Passion comes and goes, enthusiasm comes and goes, right? But at the end of the day, what I realize, right, is that, your love and your care for your students, it's not about a feeling that you feel in your heart, like, oh man, I feel like I love these kids today, so I'm going to go do the best I can for them, right? It's a commitment you make to them day after day after day, right? And you wake up and you make that commitment to them. I'm going to give them the best of myself that I can today. And then you wake up the next day and you say that again to yourself, right? And so I kind of liken it. I would tell any first-year professor, it's kind of like raising kids, honestly, right? Like when you're a newborn parent, you're like so passionate about your kid, you love them, right? But then day by day, man, it's hard, right? Something raising kids, I'm sure it's not easy, right? Like you want to yell at them sometimes, you want to scream at them, you want to get mad at them, right? Yeah, teaching students is like that. Sometimes I'm like they stress me out, they tire me out, right? They frustrate me, right? But because you made that commitment to teach them, to care for them, right? That keeps you going day after day. You make that commitment each day. Just like a parent makes a commitment to raise their kid the best they can each and every day, you make that same commitment each and every day. And as you do that, right, you realize that, man, like this job is not just about a passion you feel in the moment. It's about something stronger than that, which is a commitment you made because this is the person that you want to become for these students. So anyways, something I would say, right, for any new professor out there. But anyway, so I think those are some tips I would say, things that I wish I knew when I was a student or when I was a first-year professor, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Professor Lim. This was very entertaining. I had a lot of fun. And just getting to know you, getting to learn from you. And I hope somebody that's out there listening to this gets something out of it.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Alan.
Appreciate you.
Thanks so much for the time.